It's Giant Climate Report Day. Part 2 of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's massive 6th assessment report just dropped. If you remember way back to August of 2021, we got Part 1. That covered what the science of climate change looks like now and into the future. Today, we get the Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability Report. 18 chapters and thousands of pages detailing everything the research community knows about how human-caused climate change is affecting people and ecosystems, what's already irreversible, and what we can do to limit some of the consequences. I'm not gonna lie to you. The contents of this report are bleak. They are upsetting. But like the physical science report, none of this is new. This report represents the cumulative work of thousands of scientists and researchers and concentrates all their knowledge into one easy-to-reference, albeit extremely long, document. So what does this report actually say? Well, big picture, the report is very clear that climate change and its impacts touch everything and everyone, but not equally. Climate change already is, and will continue, magnifying the impacts of unsustainable land use, resource extraction, pollution, and social inequities. Basically, everything bad, climate change makes worse, and vice versa. This report draws direct lines between climate change and serious consequences, like humanitarian crises, food insecurity, water scarcity, involuntary migration, and premature deaths. The report makes clear that Earth's average temperatures exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels is more than bad enough. And that's just another half of a degree of warming from today. Past 1.5, we start to see permanent impacts and irreversible consequences in particularly vulnerable areas like polar, mountain, and coastal ecosystems and communities. Beyond that, a lot of the tools and adaptations we use to cope with climate change stop working or are way less effective in a world 1.5 degrees warmer, like coastal protection benefits of mangroves that could be obliterated by rising sea levels, or planting trees in urban areas to reduce city temperatures that can't survive hotter summers. By focusing on 1.5 degrees exclusively in the headline statements, I think this report solidifies what the IPCC started saying with its 2019 report. Our goal should be to keep temperatures below 1.5, not the old standard of 2, and definitely nothing warmer. Of course, 1.5, 2, these numbers are arbitrary. Every fraction of a degree of warming matters. And that's highlighted really well in a new version of a figure that's been around for a long time in IPCC reports. And frankly, it's a pretty good summary of the risk and impact parts of this report, which probably explains why the summary for policymakers fills 2 pages breaking it down. There's a lot going on here, so to simplify, let's focus in. This side just shows which scenarios relate to which temperatures as we move into future climate projections. We don't know how fast we'll reduce emissions, so climate models test a whole bunch of scenarios, ranging from we get our acts together, stop emitting, and even start drawing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, to an oil company's fantasy land where fossil fuels are burned like there aren't any consequences and emissions just keep rising. But there are consequences. Or reasons for concern, which sounds more like something a stern elementary school teacher might write on a report card rather than what it actually means, the terrifying consequences if we don't do anything to prepare and adapt to projected temperature increases. The IPCC defines these 5 really broad categories that try to encapsulate everything from coral reefs and biodiversity hotspots to extreme droughts and floods to global tipping points that lead to irreversible changes in the climate system. Starting at the bottom, this is where we are right now, with moderate risks and impacts for most of the categories. Which tracks? We're already seeing massive coral reef die-offs, Arctic communities losing their homes to climate-caused erosion and sea level rise, devastating supercharged hurricanes, and unequal impacts across the globe. If the alarm bells are already going off in your head, they're about to get cacophonous when we look at what warmer temperatures might cause, with high risk across the board well under 2 degrees of warming. And beyond that, everything goes dark purple, very high risk, very fast. If we roll back the time machine and check out what this figure looked like in 2014, when the song Happy was stuck in our collective consciousness and wouldn't budge, there's a lot less purple. Essentially, what we've learned in the last 8 years is that the consequences for humanity will get even worse sooner than we thought and at lower temperature levels. And we are very much not on track to achieve a climate-resilient, sustainable world. But that doesn't mean we can't. Beyond the impacts, this report also details how we can adapt to the consequences of climate change. Adaptation, how we respond to and reduce the impacts of climate change, is essential, especially since we can see the impacts already. Even if emissions stopped tomorrow, we'd still have to deal with climate impacts that are already here, from extensive droughts and superstorms to future impacts like sea level rise. Adapting will look different depending on where you are and what risks you face. Coastal communities need to prepare for storm surge, and regions that are getting less rain and are drying out need robust water management systems. Climate change isn't going to throw anything new at us. We've seen droughts and floods and fires before. They're just more and bigger now. So really, with adaptation, it's less about what we do, but how we do it. For basically every adaptation strategy, there are examples of it helping and examples of it hurting. From early warning systems to water resource programs to agricultural innovations. Even if the tool is the same, the outcome can be vastly different. We've got a fancy word for this: maladaptation. Maladaptive responses to climate change can create lock-ins of vulnerability, exposure, and risk that are difficult and expensive to change and exacerbate existing inequalities. Short-term, isolated projects that don't bother to consider who or what they're trying to help fail, and often make things worse. Successful adaptation strategies are long-term, flexible, and center community decision makers in the process. But adaptation alone isn't enough, because right now, we're on track to blow past the effectiveness of most of the adaptation toolkit we have. We have to reduce emissions, now. So much of this information might feel stale if it wasn't so terrifying, and like, hot take, if we treat people and places better, it is better for those people and places. But there is value in the coming together of 195 countries to sign off on this document, to a collective agreement on what the state of the research looks like. And like all IPCC reports, none of this information is new. It's a collection of the last 8 years of research, building on decades of research from all the previous assessment reports and scientific community. And what all that research tells us? We need to radically transform the systems that create our society to address inequality, to reduce the impacts we're already experiencing from warming, and to fend off even more dire consequences. And we're running out of time to do that. The report says we have a narrowing window for action. It isn't closed, but it is closing. And it's going to take a Herculean amount of effort to reduce global emissions, to protect everyone already at risk, and to do so in a way that doesn't leave anyone behind, which is a daunting task. Fortunately, solutions exist. There are adaptation strategies that work, and there are millions of people around the world working to make those a reality. Make sure you're one of them. This report is massive, so obviously I can't cover all of it in a short video. I've included a link below to a playlist of other creators' videos if you want to get more perspectives and information. Thanks so much for watching.